What's up, everybody? Welcome in. It is Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. I am your host, Josh Elmer. Josh Elmer, right here, Iowa, at the voice of college football. And of course, you can find and follow all of my work, HawkeyesWire.com. We'll be welcoming in one of my writers, one of my co-workers at Hawkeyes Wire tonight, Riley Donald, in about 10 minutes or so from now. Looking forward to that. Riley, probably many of you are familiar with his work, his writing over at HawkeyesWire.com, but this will be the broadcasting debut, at least alongside myself, for Riley Donald. So looking forward to that. Hawkeye fans, what's up? Great to have you with us here on Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. Hope everybody had a tremendous 4th of July holiday with your friends, your family. Hope it was great. Iowa at the voice of college football. You can follow me at Josh on Ref. And everybody should be following the voice of college football. Just search at the VOCFB. Well, we start away from football tonight. The big news, we had hinted about it. We had assumed that this was building to be the case. Iowa has got itself a blue chip forward coming to play for head coach Ben McCollum and for the Hawkeyes. Trey Thompson announcing his commitment. And it was Trey Thompson, the 6'8", 220-pound native of Greeneville, Tennessee, listed as the number 2 prospect in the state of Tennessee in the 2026 class that on Saturday afternoon gave us all a 4th of July holiday, another reason to celebrate. Trey Thompson, the blue chip forward, announcing his commitment to the Hawkeyes. And one other pretty major bit of good news in this with Trey Thompson, he is reclassifying. He will join the Hawkeyes immediately. So Trey Thompson, who Iowa wins the commitment, wins the recruiting battle for, the talented forward that can go attack the basket, can go play above the rim, and can stretch and shoot the basketball a little bit as well. Looks like a big-time athlete. He's a blue chipper for a reason. On3 ranked him as one of the top players nationally, the number 59 player, according to 24/7 Sports. So a top 50, 60 type player in the class of 2026, committing to the Hawkeyes and will join for this upcoming season, the first season for Iowa head coach Ben McCollum. And I guess for me, this is validation that you got it right by making the move away from Fran McCaffrey, by making the move to Ben McCollum. Plenty of Iowa fans maybe didn't need this reassurance for Ben McCollum, from this staff to say that, look, the powers that be, Beth Getz and company, got it right by moving on from the all-time winningest coach in Iowa men's basketball history, and Fran McCaffrey. Probably many were ready for that change to happen for a variety of reasons. The defensive lapses that plagued the program, the inability to make the most recent NCAA tournament, and of course, the inability of the program to break that Sweet 16 drought, to break that drought to get into the tournament's second weekend. For all of those reasons, you were probably ready as a fan to just see something new. And I think in sports, oftentimes we get to that place where as fans, you're just kind of ready to see something new. Ben McCollum, a more than established head coach with what he was able to do in his lone season at Drake. Obviously, before that, a championship coach leading into his tenure at Drake, and of course, knocking off Missouri a season ago. He gave you reasons for great excitement coming in, his ties to the state, his return to the University of Iowa, who grew up probably wanting to coach the University of Iowa, that probably being the dream job for Ben McCollum. He gets the job. He brings over Bennett Sturts. He brings over a number of talented players from Drake. You think about, obviously, Tavian Banks and Cam Manyow and Isaiah Howard, Cale Combs, a litany of players that, alongside Bennett Sturts, followed their head coach, Ben McCollum, from Drake to Iowa. Alvaro Fulgaris, a big reason for excitement. Highly coveted 4 out of the transfer portal that Iowa won the recruitment for out of that transfer portal period. But this, if it isn't the first, it's now the latest instance example of, again, why the move to Ben McCollum was the right move in my mind and in many Iowa fans' minds for the Hawkeyes. You go out and you win a blue chip recruitment for Trey Thompson, who is bundles of athleticism. A bunch of big time players were in the mix in this recruitment for Trey Thompson. This is someone that a powerhouse like Kansas offered. This is somebody that Tennessee, who with Rick Barnes, what the direction of that program has been of late, Tennessee is and has been a power player in college basketball under Rick Barnes. And of course, Purdue, the program that right there with Michigan State and maybe a handful of others you could name as the top program or programs in the Big Ten right now. You beat out Purdue for Trey Thompson. That's no small thing. That wasn't something that was happening for the Iowa basketball program, but it's happened for Ben McCollum, and it's happened for Iowa very quickly now in this first offseason, this first summer under Coach Ben McCollum's watch. So the latest example of why this Iowa basketball program needed an infusion of something new, an injection of new life, and you've been rewarded by this new life, this new direction of Ben McCollum with this addition of Trey Thompson. To beat out Tennessee, to beat out Purdue is a massive deal for the Hawkeyes. And the fact that he'll be able to join straight away and potentially jumpstart this opening season for Ben McCollum is just gigantic for the Hawkeyes. You start thinking about what they've got with the lead star power of Bennett Sturts. Alvaro Fulgaris is somebody that's going to come in and score a lot of points, be a big-time playmaker for the Hawkeyes down low, stretch 4 type. Maniau, I think, is a really good player for Iowa. You brought in Trevin Jarrett as well as a big man. We'll see how quickly he could be a factor for the Hawkeyes. But Brendan Hassan, again, another player out of the transfer portal from Kansas State, sharpshooter that a ton of different programs out there wanted. It was Iowa that got him. Cooper Koch, you convinced Cooper to come back to Iowa. So a ton of juice for this Hawkeye program. Here, just real quick, what Thompson put out there. To start, I want to take the time to thank God for always walking by my side and leading me down the right path. I would also like to thank my family, friends, and coaches for always supporting me through my basketball endeavors. Extremely thankful for my parents for sacrificing so much for me to follow my dreams and passions. With that being said, I've decided to reclassify up to the 2025 class and commit to the University of Iowa. Go Hawkeyes. So big news with the Trey Thompson commitment and the reclassification. He will join Iowa and be eligible this coming season, this first season for Ben McCollum. And just real quickly, before we welcome in my partner in crime at HawkeyesWire.com, Riley Donald, to talk all sorts of Iowa football tonight and some of the stories that he's been working on for us with Hawkeyes Wire of USA Today Sports. Don't get caught up in Purdue fans out there trying to make excuses. Well, we wanted him in 2026, and that's the only reason you got him in 2025. That's a strong barrel of cope out there from Purdue fans, from Tennessee fans, you name it. It doesn't matter what the reason was that Iowa won the recruitment for Trey Thompson. What matters is, for Iowa, this isn't the type of recruitment that the Hawkeyes had been winning, but they've won it here, and they've won it early in the tenure of Ben McCollum. And I think Hawkeye fans get it, that this is no small thing to have beaten out the types of programs that you beat out in this recruitment, to go get a player of this caliber. Obviously, look, recruiting rankings are recruiting rankings, and Trey Thompson will have to get on campus, and he'll have to begin to go prove it coming this fall into the winter and, of course, into next spring and beyond. But this is something that wasn't happening for Iowa. So Hawkeye fans, I think, understand the importance and the magnitude of what this type of recruiting win means for the Hawkeye men's basketball program. So Iowa fans, you've been waiting on this for Iowa basketball, this injection of enthusiasm, excitement for the program. And it feels like for the first time in at least a couple of years here since Keegan and Chris Murray were around that there's some legitimate excitement with the men's basketball program, and for good reason. I'm excited now to say hello and welcome in my man, Mr. Riley Donald, into the house. Riley works with me at HawkeyesWire.com. And I should say, before we jump into some football talk, go ahead and subscribe, like this video, subscribe to the channel, Iowa at the voice of college football. That's how this thing grows, and we make it into a great Iowa Hawkeyes basketball, football, Indiana Fever, Caitlin Clark community, you name it, is by you guys liking, subscribing, and sharing the channel. So I certainly appreciate that. Josh Elmer, the lead writer of HawkeyesWire.com, and of course the host here of Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live, saying hello to my man, Mr. Riley Donald. Riley, what's up, man? Good evening.
Not too much. Glad to be here. How's it going?
It's going great. How is the offseason treating you?
I got the itch. Like I said, we're officially next month. We get Iowa Hawkeyes football. The end of the month, August 30th. But we're close. Training camp's coming. The summer dog days, they're nearing an end for us football fans.
Yeah, and it does, especially as I'm sure you can now speak to, Riley. And I guess off the top, we maybe should give a little bit of your background too. You played college football.
Yep.
You've got blood, sweat, and tears, right? Familial ties to the Iowa program. Tell everybody a little bit about kind of your backstory and how you got started with Hawkeyes Wire, but also your playing career as well.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of Iowa fans, if they're local from Iowa, they're going to know the Quad Cities. I played college ball at Augustana in Rock Island, Illinois. Spent 4 years there, but my Hawkeye ties are very deep-rooted. I had a younger brother, Nolan Donald. Spent 4 years as a running back with the Hawkeyes program. Spent many weekends in Kinnick Stadium, traveled in Midwest, Big Ten country. So I bleed the black and gold for Iowa, dig into Iowa, and live through them, and unfortunately sometimes die through them.
Yes. As I'm sure you can now attest to it, probably this was the case as a player too, Riley, where you're going through spring, you're going through the summer workouts, you're like, oh my gosh, when are we going to get to go hit somebody else and play football? But the offseason is a real grind. It's a real thing.
It is. You're in the weight room. I mean, you can only go in there and do the weights so many times over, sweat so many times over, see the same guys over. You get that itch. I mean, I know for me, even at a small school it happened. I can only imagine how much that is magnified for these guys going in, getting ready to training camp, like you said, ready to hit somebody else, ready to see another color other than just seeing that Hawkeye logo staring back at them every day. So I'm sure with training camp coming, we'll start getting some news bubbling out of there. The who's looking good, what the depth chart, maybe some rumors are looking like there, but it's close.
What are just some of your general thoughts about Iowa, where things stand, how last season played out? I know we got win totals to talk about from Circa Sports, and Ethan Hurkett got some nice, well-deserved off-season praise and hype, but just your general thoughts. What do you think about how last season played out and what your expectations are for Iowa going into 25?
Yeah. If I can say it, I think they made the bowl game, probably should have won the bowl game. I think you could look at last year as kind of a year of giving away games. UCLA, Iowa State, kind of no-showing at Michigan State there. Who still knows what happened at that game when they went into East Lansing? The bowl game right there, that's 3 wins right there out of those 4 that they probably should have had with Missouri, UCLA, and Iowa State. Iowa doesn't blow double-digit leads. That was extremely uncharacteristic. Turnovers doomed them in. And a little bit what I found interesting last year, and I think is what I'll get into, is the defense going to be able to make some of those patented big-time plays, those patented big-time stops that for the last decade had become the norm for Iowa? I think last year you saw the defense bend a little bit more than they did in years past, and even break it sometimes during those when those third down completions, things like that. So I think last year, despite the wins, which I know it sometimes for Iowa fans, it can sound a little bit greedy, wanting more. But I also think it's fair to say it was a year of what could have been last year in 2024.
I'm looking back at your piece, kind of the wrap-up piece to the 2024 season from January. 5 closing thoughts on the 2024 Iowa football season. The opening subsection was the season of what could have been for Iowa. And you wrote, let's call it as it is. This season could have been drastically different if Iowa had closed out games and didn't squander leads. Iowa had double-digit leads against Iowa State, UCLA, and Missouri, only to see that evaporate and turn into 3 losses. And you mentioned it, Riley, but the Michigan State game, okay, it's not a part of that category, but that was a game that you look back on and you just say, how did that night play out the way that it did?
That's just a game that Iowa is, and Michigan State, give them credit. They showed up. It was a night game, East Lansing, packed house, sold out. But another one of those games that just felt Iowa wasn't fully tuned in for. And a little bit of, you flip 3 of those games last year, that puts you fringe playoff maybe. That may be a little overzealous, but you're talking New Year's 6 probably. You're talking a whole different complexion of what that season ended as and how the taste it left in our mouth.
What do you chalk up the double-figure blown leads to? What was the culprit? And football, understandably, is not a simple one-phase game. It's a 3-phase game for a reason, right? And it's complementary football or it's not. But when you kind of collectively look back on why that played out the way it did a season ago, what do you, I guess, most attribute those blown leads to? And as we now look forward, how does Iowa get that corrected in 25?
I think the answer to that question can answer what happened and what we look forward to. I think part of what led to those uncharacteristic blown leads is one word, and I think it was predictability. I think Caleb Johnson had a historic record year for Iowa last year, but when you get a 10, 13-point lead and he's your go-to guy, the passing game, despite Tim Lester's success on the ground, I don't really attribute it to Tim Lester, but the passing game was essentially still non-existent last year. When you're up 10, 13 points, teams know Iowa's going to turn around, hand it off. Countless 3-and-outs we saw that eventually the dam's going to break on the defense. They're going to get 3. They're going to make a big chunk play. There's going to be a turnover. I think the predictability of the downhill run game, for as good and great as it was also a bit of a blessing and a curse for Iowa last year. Now, how that flips around, Mark Gronowski gives Iowa a whole new arsenal of how they can be unpredictable. Even if the passing game may not be there this year and may not have taken that step forward many hope, Iowa has a vastly different looking run game they can go to this year. They can do it. They can pound the rock with their under center. They've been behind Logan Jones, Dunker, Bo Stevens, that are all getting preseason accolades right now. But teams want to load the box. Tim Lester, he knows Mark Gronowski has the rushing ability. He can pull it. He can get out. He can be dynamic. I think just simply having a quarterback back there that can scare defenses keeps them honest and makes them a little bit less predictable.
Folks, by all means, I'm Josh Elmer. He's Riley Donald. We are, half of the team at HawkeyesWire.com, but I don't have to totally commandeer this conversation. By all means, in the chat, you have a question for Riley, something Iowa football related. Please toss it in the chat, and Riley, I'm sure, would be more than happy to respond. What do you think about Mark Gronowski? As I've navigated these last couple of months on this show, Riley, there has been a little bit of, proceeding with some caution, with some trepidation, that we've done this song and dance a little bit before with, the quarterback position, we think we've got it figured out. And, oh, by the way, Iowa went and had a big transfer portal victory by bringing in Cade McNamara and, unfortunately, for one reason or another. Primarily, I would argue the injury bug with Cade McNamara. It did not work out. So we've gone down this road, and unfortunately, we Hawkeyes have been burnt before. But what do you think about what Mark Gronowski, the different dimension he will add for Iowa, and why is this one going to be different?
Yeah, and I think it's fair to have that cautious optimism. I mean, it's normal. He had surgery earlier this offseason, sat out spring ball. So there is that, maybe worry is not the right word, but hesitation of how's the timing going to look? How are things going to click when the bullets are flying? Fortunately, he has a week one matchup against University of Albany where maybe there is a feeling out process, and they let him, if Iowa gets up big a little bit, you let him get out there. You let him get those reps. I think the dynamic aspect he brings to this offense, though, is one, he's proven. I mean, there's something to say about a guy who's a winner. And while Cade McNamara, he beat Iowa, he won while at Michigan, Mark Gronowski, he has that in him. He's won back-to-back national championships, player of the year at the FCS level. He knows how to command an offense, win games. What's dynamic for him, too, is he's a proven passer. He is, not only can he run the ball, he's got over 10,000 passing yards in his career, more than 90 touchdowns. He knows how to sling it around the yard. I think pairing that with Tim Lester, who brings in some of those NFL West Coast schemes, some of those quick hitters, get the ball out quick, don't make him hold it forever. I think that is where the dynamic aspect plays in, because Iowa on the outside, they don't necessarily have that, if you recall, Brandon Smith, Amir Smith-Marset, sort of that big body, way outside type of go up, get it 50-50 ball. At least not yet. They don't have that. Could be Reese Vanderzee if he continues to develop and take that next step, which he flashed at last year. But you got to look at the other guys. You've got Jacob Gill, Seth Anderson, transfer from Chattanooga, Sam Phillips. Not the biggest guys, but smart, quick, get the ball out, get the hands in there, get the ball into their hands quick. I think Tim Lester paired with Mark Gronowski, who's a proven passer, I think that could be a different look for the Iowa passing game and offense.
I try not to totally get into the world of absolutes with
Right.
sports and football, but this does feel like for Kirk Ferentz, for Tim Lester, and for the success of Mark Gronowski, that if he can author it, if he can deliver it, Riley, it's got the chance, again, not living totally in the world of absolutes here, but look, there's a stink about Iowa offensively, that there's a perception out there about Iowa offensively. And if Mark Gronowski can go be not just good, but better than good, great, right? One step down from great. If he can be that quarterback for Tim Lester for Iowa, with what Phil Parker has done defensively, with the way that Kirk Ferentz has consistently won with this program, this feels like, I mean, again, not to be too dramatic, but could this be transformative for Iowa in whatever this final act of Kirk Ferentz looks like?
Yeah, like you said, you don't want to be absolute, but it does have that feeling. So a lot of the pieces are there right now. If Mark Gronowski, and that is the biggest if entering 2025 for the Iowa Hawkeyes, if he can be that elevated quarterback play right now, maybe not the sky is the limit, but Iowa has a chance to put together an extremely special season. And we can get into the schedule, win totals. The schedule, it's not their easiest schedule they've had in past years, but they also avoid some of the big dogs such as Michigan, Ohio State, and their toughest games, Oregon and Penn State. They get in Kinnick. And if history tells us anything, if they can get one of those Kinnick at night, anything can happen in there. Take one from those two teams. If Mark Gronowski can handle the pressure, you can start dreaming a little bit about what a 10, maybe 9, 10, maybe 11-win Iowa team could look like this year as kind of a swan song for Kirk Ferentz.
That was one of my calling cards a week ago. The beginning of the season, the front half of the schedule is gigantic for Iowa. If you're talking about a 9-10-win season, and you tell me, 9 maybe if Mark Gronowski shows that Iowa has radically improved offensively, and, Penn State and Oregon are dramatic close losses, and maybe that's coupled with a final third loss early versus Iowa State. Like, maybe that's a college football playoff at large berth, but probably we're talking about 10 wins, right?
Yeah, and again, we're only entering the second year of the expanded 12-team format, so there's not a ton of precedence to go on, but just by what the committee's shown and what it feels like, it feels like 10 is that number you have to hit. And if you can do 10 in a power conference, you've got quite the case. As long as you're 10, is like I said, like you said, as long as you get your 10 and your 2 aren't repeats of Iowa at Penn State 2 years ago when you at 30-0 loss and you're blanked, and unfortunately those hurt you quite a bit. If you're competitive, you stay in it. I think the committee is going to give you a chance. I mean, you saw with Indiana had 11 wins last year, but it's a similar case. They were at least a little bit competitive in their one loss they had. Committee rewarded them for that. So if they can win, if they can get to that 10 number, I think there's a chance, and maybe even likely they get in. May not be hosting at Kinnick if they get to 10, maybe going on the road. Who knows where they're going, but could be that accolade for Kirk Ferentz, get a college football playoff appearance, and finally break through for Iowa.
Josh Helmer alongside Riley Donald. We are half of the team. We're 2 of the founding members of HawkeyesWire.com. We were there from day one, HawkeyesWire.com. So check out his work. Check out my work at HawkeyesWire.com. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us on Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live, right here, Iowa, at the Voice of College Football. And again, if you have a question for Riley or myself, something you want us to dive into here tonight, please toss it into the chat and we'll jump into it. The front half of the schedule, I think, Riley, you just got to feast on it. Based on what we think this is going to be on paper, Albany, at Iowa State, obviously, Rocco Becht company, they are expected to be good. That probably, at least on paper today, is the most challenging because it's on the road. And again, Iowa State is suspected to be a top 25 type team. UMass at Rutgers, you've handled the trips to Piscataway in the past well. That's not been a problem area for you. And again, Rutgers is not expected to be a big roadblock coming into this season. So I'm looking at it, and then you got Indiana, and I've said week after week, show after show, Riley, that, look, Luke Fickell has got to prove to me that he can indeed win in the Big Ten. He hasn't done that yet. So I get it's the house of jump around, and it's a rivalry game, and it's a trophy game, and you respect Wisconsin certainly historically, but this is not really that Wisconsin yet until Luke Fickell proves that it is that Wisconsin. So I look at that front half of the schedule and I contrast it against Penn State, Minnesota, Oregon, at USC, Michigan State, and at Nebraska. The back half looks a lot more daunting to me. So that being said, if we're talking about, okay, it takes 10 to get in, 10 to dance in the college football playoff, to me, you probably got to win 5 and maybe even be perfect in those first 6 contests if you want to get to 10-2.
Yeah, I think if you want to have that chance, worst case has to be a 5-1 stretch in that slate, and you don't want to pick who that one is, but if it's going to happen, it's probably going to be at Iowa State, in Ames, and probably what's going to be a raucous Jack Trice, which always is. But like you said about Piscataway, Iowa's had success at Ames as well. The last few years, Iowa they've handled those road trips fine. They've forced turnovers there, but this is also a different Iowa State animal. Rocco Becht probably, and Iowa fans don't get too mad at me, I think he has a case to play himself into a first-round NFL draft pick. I think he is a gamer. I think he's tough. I think he's going to be an absolute test for Phil Parker, a young and less experienced secondary, less experienced linebacking core. I think that game is going to tell us a lot about Phil Parker and how he has revamped his defense. But the other stretch, like you said, Albany, UMass, at Rutgers, some people may be looking at that Indiana game. I think you see a little bit of a regression from Indiana last year. I don't see the Indiana team rattling off another college football playoff appearance. They're not going to be schmucks by any mean. Cignetti, he knows how to coach. He has new quarterback in Mendoza coming in. But get through that, handle Wisconsin if you can. Very business-like approach to that. If you can get to hosting Penn State at 5-1, 6-0, you give yourself a little bit of wiggle room, but you also give yourself a lot of confidence. At that point, Iowa knows going into that game, it's not necessarily your ticket to the college football playoff because you still have to finish out your schedule. But if you can snag Penn State or you can snag Oregon, if you can pick up one of those two, the rest of that schedule, it's all right in front of you for the taking to force your way into the field without having to. I mean, it'd be possibly an at-large at 10-2, but if it's 10-2 and you take down Penn State or Oregon, you're essentially forcing your way into that 12-team college football playoff.
And though history should not inform the way we treat a given season, I'm not naive enough to believe that it doesn't at times inform some of the decisions that are made by a human committee. So having said that, if Iowa in a victory, I think if they split Penn State, Oregon, based on who we think these teams are going to be going into the season, if you split those two games, you got a great chance to get in. And oh, by the way, if you split them and you win the game that you win based on Mark Gronowski putting 30-plus points up on the board, and he has a big late fourth quarter drive, and it's like, wait a second, who's this Reese Vander Zee guy? Who's this Phillips kid, right? Who's this Jacob Gill? If it happens offensively in that way, I do believe that though maybe, again, history shouldn't inform the way we feel about these teams, I don't know that I totally buy that at times it doesn't. Okay, I've taken up, Riley, a lot of your time already tonight. Are you good to hang for about 10 more, or you got to get out of here?
Yeah, I was good, and I was going to piggyback on sort of how you said the history. Some people say it doesn't, some does. What scares me is if you're going to believe, let's say Iowa gets, and maybe they split something like that, what scares me isn't the trip to USC, isn't Nebraska. It's hosting Michigan State. It's that game. If Iowa can get to that game with a successful record, it feels very, very reminiscent of 2021. If you recall, Iowa hosted Penn State. They were 2-3 in the country, I believe. Took down Penn State, laid an egg against Purdue. That is the game, and it's probably terrors of last year, laying an egg against them. That is the game right now that I think people maybe, if Iowa can get to that with a shot at the playoff, I think that's the game where things hinge on. It's not the Nebraska season finale, anything like that. It's that game right there where I think a lot hinges on if Iowa can manage their schedule up to that point.
Well, it's easy to get up for the Heroes Trophy, right? That's Iowa, Nebraska. We were chatting about it. The Athletic came out with its list of the top 100 rivalries in college football. And Iowa Penn State was on that list. I don't know that I'd put Iowa Penn State as a college football rivalry, but okay, they had 100 spots that they had to fill. At any rate, what you would expect: Iowa State, Iowa Wisconsin, Iowa Minnesota, Iowa Nebraska. All of the games that you would suspect as Iowa rivalries were on there. And look, Iowa Nebraska has morphed into a big-time game for both Hawkeye and Husker fans. So you can get up for that regular season finale, but can you handle the trap game before it in Michigan State? Let's take a peek at these odds that are out there. This is from Circa Sports, and Brett McMurphy is the reporter that tossed this out there. Big Ten win totals, and you'll see all sorts of different win totals from FanDuel, you name it. But this is from Circa Sportsbook in Las Vegas, and there you can see right there, smack dab, kind of behind that top tier, Riley, if you will, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State. That's the trio that's in that topmost echelon. According to the odds makers at Circa Sports, 10.5, their win totals. Then you have your Indiana, Michigans of the world at 8.5, and Iowa in that next bunch down, that third tier. And maybe you can just almost combine Indiana and Michigan with Iowa in this group here. But Illinois, Iowa, Nebraska, USC, Washington, all 7.5. I got to say, I mean, I like the over for Iowa on the 7.5. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, the black and gold Kool-Aid. Give it to me, baby.
Yeah, I think it's what you expect an Iowa line to be, right? Did you expect it to be anything other than a possible 7-4 or 7-5, 8-4 prediction for Iowa? It's who Iowa is. It's who the nation believes they are. And until they maybe prove consistently they're not them, that's who Iowa is. But I think 7.5. If I'm a betting man, I'm going over on the Iowa. I'm taking them 8. Realistically, as we're saying, 9, 10 win gets us in. I think Iowa, though, we're at 8-4, 9-3. Probably, if we're going to look at things through maybe take off the Iowa colors, everything like that, 7.5 feels low. 7-5 feels like, barring injuries, sort of a catastrophic failure. I see the floor for Iowa this year is an 8-4 floor, and likely probably 9-3 if Mark Gronowski takes a step up to 10-2.
You got to just handle your business against the Rutgers, the Michigan States. Tough to get a pulse on what USC is going to be. Lincoln Riley certainly is a great offensive play caller, and maybe a little less expectations, not a bad thing for Lincoln Riley right now. He certainly will not have the large expectations with this USC team. So that could be a tricky middle November road trip that you're kind of not thinking it is right now, though. I like Iowa fans to travel in a big time way to that USC game. So I think that could be an Iowa takeover out west from a fan standpoint. Now, obviously, you got to go deliver on the field. So to me, just looking at it, Iowa State on the road. Indiana, I'll give Kurt Cignetti his flowers until proven otherwise that we should not. I think Mendoza was a good pickup for them. Wisconsin, out of respect for the trophy game. Penn State, Oregon, USC, Nebraska. I mean, those are the games that kind of I'm looking at as, okay, these are going to be tough ones to go win for Iowa. And the other ones, I feel like the Hawkeyes should handle their business. And if they do, then that, to me, has Iowa pretty comfortably on the right side of that 7.5 win total.
Yep. I mean, we talked about it earlier when I was on. Iowa gift-wrapped 3 games last year. Well, 2, I should say, regular season. Gift-wrapped 2 regular season games and still routed off what they did. Take care of business in a couple of those against teams you had pretty much dead to rights. You had them beat going into the second half. Play defense, run the ball, possess it. If Iowa can do that, like you said, handle business, sitting on the upper side of that over, feels like what Iowa should have the expectations for this year.
Anything else from these odds jump out to you? Any of the other win totals catch your eye?
Couple do here. I think the first one, I am not high on Indiana this year, unfortunately. I know you are. You like Mendoza. I don't think they go. I don't think it's bad. I don't think they completely falter. I think they settle at 7-5, 8-4. I think they just miss that, go a little bit under. Other ones I'm looking at, I actually, as we start going down the list a little bit here as a Big Ten football nerd, I think Michigan State, I think you go over. I think Michigan State, I think the Spartans go bowling. I think they're not going to pull off the 2024 Indiana, make a run to the top of the Big Ten. But if you're a Big Ten guru, a college football fan, I think the Spartans could go 6-6, 7-5. If Aiden Childs, he's a dynamic quarterback as well, extremely skilled, talented, maybe needs to polish a little bit more. I'd say he's raw. But if they can do that, I think Sparty is a team here who could possibly get 6-7 wins.
What about Illinois? They've been a buzzy team throughout this offseason with Luke Altmaier coming back. You kind of go up and down the Big Ten, and there's not a ton of places where the quarterback is back. That's one of them. And for that reason and some of these other returnees, a lot of folks are high on Illinois. Where do you stand with the Illini?
If I had to pick, so last year the Big Ten sent 4 to the playoff. If I had to stand here right now and look at America and tell them who I think the 4th team is, if there's a team that could make the playoff, it's Illinois. Very high on the Illini. I think Luke Altmaier is the best quarterback possibly in the Big Ten. He took a massive, massive step forward for the Illini last year. I think they've got Bielema. He's building, as much as he may come to Iowa in the future. That's for down the road. He's building something at Illinois. I think they really have a good thing going down there. I think if Altmaier, they're a very similar situation. I think they're the Big Ten's version of Iowa State. Talented quarterback, strong year last year. Can they put it together again? I think they do. I like Altmaier. I like what Bielema's doing. I think Illinois is a team that I think they're a team to look out for. Late November, December. Again, I don't think they're going to win the Big Ten, anything like that. I think they could be last year's Indiana.
I've taken up a lot of your time, so just to pay off the tease to the audience here, the audience, hey, they want to ask you a question. Ruth Ann, do you think Kirk will let go of the reins and let Tim Lester have total control? Last year, Tim Lester stated that Kirk pulled back the reins a few times and overruled Lester on a few calls. What do you make of that? Do you think that Kirk said whoa up on several occasions? And is this truly going to be Tim Lester's offense entirely?
Yeah, so I had a two-part answer to that. So first, I think it's probably truer than not. There are times Kirk overrules the call. He's on the headset. He's the head coach. I think there's times where Kirk may play a little bit more conservative. It's tough to argue. He's won games doing it, played special teams, played field position. I think that has happened on occasion. The other thing, I think Kirk and Lester's hands were a little bit forced last year. I mean, McNamara, when he was in, was still hurt. He was playing banged up. And then you go down the line. And then Brendan Sullivan, I know when he came in, we still didn't have a full playbook. Lester really, I don't think that's Kirk pulling it away. I think they're just working with a smaller playbook they've had. These guys, the twos, as a former player, the backups, they only get so many reps in practice. You don't have your full arsenal when they're thrown into a game, as Iowa continues to go down that list. Jackson Stratton, who stepped in admirably last year, he might be getting 4 or 5 reps of practice of live action against an Iowa defense. I think more than Kirk pulling it back from Lester, I think their hands were forced. You can keep more of your playbook if you're running a backup receiver, a backup guard, a backup running back. As soon as you get to that backup quarterback, you start getting into some treacherous waters trying to run everything you may have if these guys haven't had the live experience. I think that's probably more the case with a Mark Gronowski this year. And if he stays healthy, he's extremely experienced. He seems like the type of guy Kirk likes. He's smart. He's going to be good with the ball. I think this is the year you could really see the Lester offense open up a little bit more if he stays healthy.
Well, he's got the quarterback, right? And he didn't have the quarterback. And so theoretically, that alone should help you quite a bit. You got the right trigger man. Yeah.
And I just, like I said, you can only run what these guys have had experience with. You're begging for turnovers, misreads, mistakes. If you throw one of these backups in, especially a quarterback, running your full playbook when, like I said, they may have repped this play 2 to 3 times all season in practice. So I think there's a bit of also behind the scenes stuff there going into the game. I think Kirk and Lester probably know we've only got bang, bang, bang to work with.
One final thought here from Chevy Oda. I'm circling Illinois at Indiana on September 20th. Yep. Big Ten opener for both and a chance to see how they measure up.
I think that's, you're going to get a measuring stick for both those teams in that game. I think at Indiana, there's going to be the hype, the excitement from last year. I think Illinois handles that excitement, that moment going on the road. Bielema feels a little bit like a younger Kirk, where maybe some of that fan excitement, he's able to calm him down a little bit, kind of relax. The moment's not too big. I think Bielema has the ability to do that. And I think if Illinois wins it, that's sort of that first stepping stone for the Illini of, hey, we're here. We're on our way. We're a Big Ten football school. I think that's a good chance for Illinois to show the nation who they really are and what they're building.
You said earlier that you kind of see Indiana 7-5, 8-4. And I would just say, to me, where I'm sitting, I know what they did a season ago, but to me, that's not all bad for Indiana if that's what they wind up being. I mean, to me, I'm evaluating Curt Cignetti in Indiana and saying, if they can prove that they can be that annually, to me, that's pretty good.
Yeah. And I probably it would be, I mean, by definition, it would be a regression from 11-1, but what season for most teams wouldn't be a regression after you go 11-1? If Indiana can sort of have staying power, like you said, at that 8-4, 7-5, 9-3, hang around there, sort of do an Iowa thing, boom, 1 year, 10-11 wins. Hard to argue that's not a massive success for Cignetti in Indiana becoming not just a basketball school, as many people would think they are, but becoming a player in Big Ten football.
Yeah, it's look, I'm happy for those fans. I know probably we don't spend a ton of time being happy for Hoosier fans, but I just think it's cool in college sports in general when you see programs that don't typically do something have some success. Now, obviously, not at the expense of Iowa. So we'll get a chance to handle that firsthand this season versus Cignetti and company. Riley, you are the man. Thanks for carving out plenty of time for me and for us tonight. Sorry we kept you a long time, but I got a million different questions I could ask you, so we've just scratched the surface. At some point in the next couple of weeks, months, we'll get you back on before kickoff. But thank you, my friend, and tell everybody where they can read your work and follow you on social media, etc.
Yeah, I'm always down to talk Iowa football. If there's questions to talk about Iowa football, send them in. I'm always down. But yeah, as Josh said, Hawkeyes Wire, that's where you'll find our pieces at. Anything, everything Iowa football. But on socials on X at Riley Donald 7. That's where you'll find me. Plenty of Iowa talk. You might get into it. You might like it. You might dislike it. But it'll be Iowa talk.
I like it. Hey, my friend, thanks for carving out time for me, man. The best to you and the family, and we'll talk again soon.
Got it. Take care.
See you, buddy. That is Mr. Riley Donald. You can see he is a star in this industry, and obviously a big-time Hawkeye as well. Okay, so some final thoughts from me before we get out of here. The Athletic has put together its list of the top 100 college football rivalries, and there's plenty of Iowa flair on that list. So let's run down some of those before we get out of here. And Joel Klatt, some thoughts on the Iowa Hawkeyes as well. Real quick before we do that in the final 10 minutes or so of the program tonight. And again, everybody, please like and subscribe to the channel. Like this video, share it with your friends, your family. Let them know that, look, every Monday night at 6 o'clock, Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live is here to talk Hawkeye athletics with you. Like and subscribe. That's the way we grow this thing and continue to make it better and more fun and great. You can follow me at Josh on Ref, and everybody should follow the voice of college football at the VOC FB out there on social media. So comments from you, though, before we move on to some of the final items tonight. Ed asks, should we accept a bowl bid with a 5-7 record? Ed, I am a staunch believer that no, Iowa should not accept a bowl bid with a 5-7 record. I would probably not sit there and just from the mountaintops, scream and stamp the feet that don't go to the bowl game if you get invited. I could understand the argument from Kirk Ferentz from Iowa that, hey, it's extra bowl practices, so on and so forth. I definitely get the pros to it. I just tend to believe and subscribe to the idea that whether it's Iowa, whether it's anybody in college football, teams with losing records, to me, shouldn't play bowl games. I think there's one too many bowl games to begin with. I'd like to see the non-college football playoff games, the other bowl games. I'd like to assign some more value and meaning to those games. And I think, the more games you have that are bowl games, the more losing record teams that go to bowl games, the more it takes a bite out of the apple that are bowl games in general. So if you're asking for my vote, I say no. If you have a losing record, to me, no thanks on the bowl bid. T. Hink, my man, Taylor has been in the house. Good evening, Taylor. Great to see you. And Rocky was asking, is Tavian Banks related to the Banks that played football at Iowa? And, of course, many of you are chiming in and saying, no, that is not the case. T. Hink was wondering when Trey Thompson, the recent Iowa basketball commit, will get on campus. And Kelvin chiming in, his high school just has to email over the reclassification and be accepted to enroll. So the expectation is that Trey Thompson will be joining Iowa basketball very, very quickly. Scott, it's great to see you tonight. Scott jumps in and says, hello. 54 days until Hawkeye kickoff. How about that, baby? We're getting real close. Starting to finally get close. Logan, good evening. Great to see you in here. And let's see, Kelvin, a comment as well to Ruth Ann. Kirk just told Lester to lean on the run game against Minnesota because we were averaging 8.9 yards per carry. So that's one vote from Kelvin out there that, no, this was not Kirk Ferentz calling all the shots offensively for Iowa and overriding Tim Lester. I think pretty clearly that the best pathway to success for Tim Lester, for Iowa, is for Tim Lester to have the full reins of this Hawkeye offense. And of course, as Riley and I discussed, with Mark Gronowski, if he winds up being a trusty quarterback, a quarterback that adds a new dimension to this Iowa offense, somebody that can open up truly the confidence in every play call that you have, then I think naturally, if Kirk Ferentz has been, if you want to say, breathing over the shoulder a little bit of Tim Lester, that he'll allow Tim Lester to call this offense as he sees fit with a quarterback in Mark Gronowski that both Kirk Ferentz and obviously Tim Lester completely trust to run all of the calls that Iowa has in the playbook. So hopefully, by virtue of Iowa just being better offensively and having a better quarterback, that some of your concerns, Ruth Ann, that those can be alleviated by, again, just having a quarterback and having an offense that you totally trust. So let's see here. Joel Klatt today on the Joel Klatt Show. Great show. Good college football thinker out there. One of several great college football analysts. Joel Klatt, Fox Sports analyst. He released his list of 10 college football programs that are most likely to break through and be first-time college football playoff participants this season. And lo and behold, there's the Iowa Hawkeyes. Iowa checks in at number 5 on his list. And, of course, you can see right there if you're following along on the YouTube side of Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. But for any audio listeners out there, the 1 through 10, Illinois 1, Ole Miss 2, South Carolina 3, Miami 4, Iowa 5, Missouri 6, USC 7, K-State 8, Florida 9, and Nebraska number 10. So Iowa, the 5th most likely, according to Joel Klatt, to break through and make their first college football playoff appearance. And count me in the camp that I, for one, would love to not have Iowa on this list a year from now. But here's some of what Joel Klatt said about Iowa. He said, Iowa went 1-3 last season in games that were decided by 3 points or less. So again, you can turn those games into wins. They have proven under Kirk Ferentz that they can win, that they can win close games. They can have great seasons. They can play above their head. They bring in the best quarterback from the FCS, Mark Gronowski from South Dakota State. And I think he might be. I know there's going to be impact transfers everywhere, but at the quarterback position, I'm looking at John Mateer going to Oklahoma and Mark Gronowski going from South Dakota State to Iowa. These are going to be huge. Gronowski is a hell of a player. He won 2 FCS national championships, was the Walter Payton winner 2 years ago, has been a 4-year starter, and has started 55 games in his career and won 49 of them. So that some of the rationale for why Joel Klatt has Iowa as one of his 10 most likely first-time college football playoff participants. And it's a lot of what we've spent time discussing here on Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live, that Mark Gronowski is a different dimension for this Iowa offense. And for the Hawkeyes, what Gronowski can provide for making the Hawkeyes a true multi-dimension offense where you have to account for the quarterback, his feet, and of course his ability to throw the football. That if Mark Gronowski is that, you'd have to think, just based on the history over the past decade or so, that Iowa is a part of that select group of programs that hasn't had a losing season in that stretch. There's not a lot of programs out there in college football that can say that. And throughout a significant portion of that stretch, Iowa was doing that without a quarterback like we think Mark Gronowski is going to be. So I'm picking up what Joel Klatt is laying down. I do think that Iowa is – it's not going to be some massive surprise to me if Iowa is a team that we're talking about late into the season as a potential college football playoff crasher. I think that's a possibility on the table for Iowa if Mark Gronowski can be the quarterback that Tim Lester and Iowa hopes that he can be. The schedule, it sets up to where you can make a run at a college football playoff. There's legitimate challenges on it. Iowa State early, Indiana with Curt Cignetti appears as though they will remain a challenger year in and year out, though this will be that do they have staying power year for Indiana. It's a prove-it year for them. Wisconsin, Minnesota, rivals that appear to still be down, but those are trophy games that you respect on the schedule for Iowa. And, of course, Penn State, Oregon, big-time dates at USC and at Nebraska. So there's legitimate challenges on this schedule, but if Mark Gronowski has realistically, legitimately elevated the Hawkeyes offensively, then absolutely. I think late into that schedule with those games, those final 3 games at USC versus Michigan State and at Nebraska, I can definitely see the scenario that Joel Klatt's painting where Iowa is in that college football playoff conversation and maybe is making its first college football playoff appearance. Okay, so just a couple of minutes before we call it a night on this Monday edition of Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. And thanks so much to everybody for hanging out with me and with Riley right here, Iowa at the voice of college football. Kitten jumps in. What's up, Josh? Go Hawks, baby. Yes, go Hawks indeed. It appears my internet is trying to give us some problems. So if I'm buffering around on you, I apologize as we limp to the finish line from a internet connection standpoint. But The Athletic went and ranked college football's top 100 rivalries, and they listed a bunch of Iowa's rivalry games on here. Now, I would not put Iowa-Penn State into the rivalry category, but The Athletic has done so. And that's the first game that makes the top 100 college football rivalries, according to The Athletic. Iowa-Penn State checks in at number 67 on The Athletic's rivalry list. Penn State leads the series 18-14. It delivered the most recent high water moment for Hawkeye football when obviously Petrus connected with Ragaini and he gets into the end zone late on an beneath the lights night inside Kinnick Stadium not too awfully long ago. That would be your best moment in Hawkeye football history of late. So Iowa-Penn State, number 67 on this rivalry, top 100 college football rivalries list. And then you go way up the list, and this, I think, is a rivalry of late that will only continue to grow and blossom on a list like this, especially if Iowa in these however many years are left of Kirk Ferentz's direction and leadership and under the next Iowa coach. If he can keep or maybe elevate Iowa from where Iowa has been under Kirk Ferentz, which is a consistent winner if not always a national player. If you can jump into that more routine national conversation, and if Nebraska can reemerge as a national player, Iowa, Nebraska, number 44 on this college football rivalries list, number 44 rivalry nationally. And this one, I think, going to keep skyrocketing, has the chance to go up the charts if these two programs can remain or enhance their national position. Iowa, Minnesota was number 34. The Cy-Hawk game checks in at number 32 on this list. Iowa, Wisconsin is number 22, according to The Athletic's top college football rivalries, and that would be the highest ranked Iowa rivalry game, according to The Athletic, in this summer of college football 2025. So Iowa, Wisconsin, very closely contested. It's basically a coin flip in terms of the all-time series between Iowa and Wisconsin. And so that certainly gives it a nice argument as one of the great rivalries in college football. A rivalry is not always defined by the competitiveness of the series, but a lot of times it also is a key component, right? I think we all know, recognize, and understand that. So Iowa, Wisconsin, the top rivalry for the Hawkeyes, according to The Athletic in college football history, top 100 rivalries, number 22, Iowa, Wisconsin. And again, backtracking up that list, the Cy-Hawk game was number 32, according to The Athletic. Minnesota versus Iowa, Minnesota, the battle for the Floyd of Rosedale, number 34 on the list, and Iowa, Nebraska, number 44. And again, I don't know why Penn State, Iowa is on this list, but Iowa, Penn State cracked the top 100 here. I guess you got to find 100 college football games in rivalries somehow, some way. Iowa, Penn State was number 67. Chevy Oda. Floyd is the best trophy, and it belongs in Iowa City. Well, it would be my belief that all of the trophies belong in Iowa City. But yes, Floyd absolutely does. Hey, that's going to do it for me on this Monday night. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out on Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. We'll be here every Monday night, 6 o'clock. Look forward to seeing all of you then. For my partner at HawkeyesWire.com, Mr. Riley Donald, appreciate him strolling by this evening to share a bunch of his thoughts on Iowa football. And, of course, as always, thank you to all of you for liking, subscribing, hanging out in the chat with me on a Monday night. This is Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. Iowa at the voice of college football. Do me a big-time favor and like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell to let you know when new episodes, clips, you name it, drop out there. And that's the best way I can keep growing this and make this a financial windfall of sorts for myself, or at least some form or fashion of a financial success. But obviously just appreciate getting to hang out with all of you Hawkeye fans on Monday nights at 6 o'clock. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. We'll do it again in a short order of time. Until then, go Hawks, everybody. So long.